Good evening and welcome to I'm Chris Parnell.
Reporting from Moscow
to Tbilisi,
Times Square.
May your dreams be your only boundaries in life.
Hello, and welcome to Tennessee Talks. I'm your host, Ruth Dunning. Each month on Tennessee Talks, we introduce you to political leaders from around the area and discuss local politics and issues. This week, we're excited to talk to one of Shelby County's leaders in justice, Shelby County District Attorney General Amy Weirich. Amy Weirich, re-elected to her position last August, has been the county district attorney since 2011. Before she took the general's position, Mrs. Weirich served as a prosecutor for more than 20 years. Her leadership and courage in prosecuting local criminals has made Memphis safer. We are glad to have her here today. Actually, we're glad to have you back today. This is your second time to visit us in our brand new set.
It's beautiful.
Isn't it wonderful?
It's always good to be back on the grounds of Germantown High School.
High School, yes. In fact, you can tell us about your experience in school and Germantown High School.
Yes, well, I'm a proud graduate of Germantown High School. I graduated in 1983, and before that, I attended Dogwood Elementary School. I was actually a member of the first graduating class of Dogwood Elementary, so these are special places for me.
Right, right.
Yeah.
How did you end up being a lawyer and then an attorney and a district attorney?
Well, I wanted to be a prosecutor, and to be a prosecutor, you have to suffer through law school. So I went to undergraduate at the University of Tennessee at Martin, and went on to law school here at the University of Memphis before they moved into their beautiful facilities
fabulous
down on the river.
Yes.
Graduated there, and then was fortunate enough to be hired by then General John Perotti, who was the DA at the time. Started out at 201 in the DA's office in 1991, fresh out of law school, and have been there ever since.
Ever since, So you are the experience of...
Well, one of them.
One of them, but...
Yes, yeah, been around there a while, but every day I learn something new.
Oh, yes, that's typical of a lot of jobs, Tell us about this new warrant writ dealing with gangs.
The gang injunction.
The gang injunction, yes.
Sure.
Tell us about that.
There was a piece of legislation passed by our legislature in 2007, and what it said was that DAs and with the cooperation of the city attorney can ask a judge to declare certain gangs a nuisance. Of course, we have to prove quite a few things to the judge and establish our case to the judge before the judge signs that piece of paper. But what it gives us the power to do is to tell those gang members, those identified, proven gang members, you're not allowed to congregate on the street corners. If law enforcement sees two or more of you standing on the corner, even if you're not committing a crime, even if it's not a curfew violation or whatever, but just two of you together after this injunction goes into place, law enforcement has the power and authority to lock you up. And we've used it 3 times here in the city of Memphis, and knock on wood, we've seen some real turnaround in some war-torn areas. The latest one that we filed was in 2 different apartment complexes, and the gangs had taken over those apartment complexes. And in fact, the violence was so horrific there that the gangs referred to each of the apartment complexes as Iraq and Afghanistan.
Oh, my heavens.
Right. And so the good guys, the good people that live in these communities deserve better.
Right,
and the law
absolutely.
gives us the ability to bring them a little relief, and that's what we do with that gang injunction.
How do you know who's a member of a gang?
Well, fortunately, they make it pretty easy for us. They either admit their gang involvement through prior statements that are taken from law enforcement. When they're booked into the jail on cases, they often are very honest about their gang affiliation because they don't want to be thrown into a cell with somebody that's in a rival gang member. So we're able to keep up with intelligence and data that our law enforcement spends thousands of hours gathering. And then they do a lot of boasting and bragging, quite frankly, about their gang involvement, and we use social media and other tools like that. But good old-fashioned police detective work and the hard work of our prosecutors and city attorneys to compile all this information and prove to the judge that these identified people are members of this identified gang, and that this gang exists for the sole reason of committing criminal activity.
Back up, you said social media. Does that mean gang members post pictures on social media?
It does, and they do, yes. And so all of us that are parents of teenagers, I think we know what a blessing and a curse social media can be for our young people today. But from a law enforcement standpoint, it is something that is used quite often.
I'm amazed that they brag about their gang activity. I can see how they would like to be identified with one so they're not put with rival gang members.
Sure.
But bragging is a little...
Sure. I handled a case years ago where we had pictures of the two killers on social media holding the murder weapon and bragging about what they had done. And again, it's stupid, it's horrible, it's cold and heartless, but the flip side of it is, thank goodness they do it, because it makes it easy for us to do our job and remove them from society.
In the last year or two since you were last here, have you had any cases you'd like to tell us about? Anything really interesting that cropped up?
Oh wow, we had a very busy year last year. The gang injunctions was a goal of mine when I took office, and so to be able to issue or have issued 3 of those was a great accomplishment in the work of our multi-agency gang unit. We were very busy in the courtrooms downtown at 201, trying cases, and our caseload went up last year higher than it's ever been. I think we handled over 113,000 cases just within the DA's office. So I think just the general accomplishment of the dedicated work of the employees of the District Attorney General's office. I can't give them Christmas bonuses at the end of the year, but they work tirelessly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week because of their commitment to the public.
We're lucky to have them.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We are.
We don't have much time for a break, but tell us, define grand jury, and tell us how a grand jury differs from a regular trial jury.
Sure. A grand jury is made up of regular men and women in the community who get that same summons in the mail that says you've been asked to come down for jury duty. And some of those people from that general pool are pulled aside and asked if they can commit 6 weeks to serving on a grand jury. And what the grand jury does, it is separate and apart from the District Attorney General's office. There's a foreman of the grand jury who's not an employee of the DA's office, whose job it is to keep things moving and keep things running.
So it's not a foreman like a foreman of a trial jury who's a member of the jury.
Right. It is and it isn't, but it's the same foreman day in and day out, and then the members of the grand jury rotate
okay.
a little more regularly. But we've had foremans that have served for many years. And they listen to cases presented to them from typically 99% of the time the law enforcement officer, the detective whose case it was, will actually walk into the grand jury room and present the probable cause.
Okay.
It's not, and so that grand jury is saying there's enough information here, there's enough proof and evidence in front of us to indict this individual. What a petit jury is doing is saying
you're guilty or
beyond a reasonable doubt. The highest burden in the land is what a criminal jury has to meet. Yeah.
Hang on to that thought. We'll be right back. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Amy Weirich. Stay with us. Good.
You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
Everybody needs a helping hand. Take a look at your fellow man and tell me what can I do to
Let me get that for you.
Everybody needs a helping out. If that ain't what it's all about, tell me what.
Thank you, young man.
What can I
No problem.
do? What can I do today?
Courtesy. Pass it on.
I got it.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Welcome back to Tennessee Talks. I'm Ruth Dunning, and we've been talking with Shelby County Attorney General, Amy Weirich, and we were talking about the difference between a petit jury and a grand jury. Let's talk a little bit about the evidence and what kind of evidence has to be presented, et cetera. And then we're going to talk about Ferguson.
All right. And with the grand jury, typically what is presented to them it is up to the officer presenting the case. So if it's a situation where the victim has identified the individual that robbed her in a photo spread, that's probably going to be shared with them. The basic facts of the case, when it occurred, where it occurred, what was taken. If there was a confession from the defendant, that's probably going to be shared with the grand jury. But they're not going to spend time in the grand jury going over every detail that we would then use in the trial, because again, the burden is much higher in front of the petit jury. That's when we have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The grand jury process is the first step along the way in the criminal justice process.
Is cross-examination ever possible in a grand jury?
Oh, sure. The grand jurors can ask questions and often do, yes. Of the witnesses, yes.
And can another lawyer come in and because apparently in Ferguson that didn't happen, is, you know, in my very limited knowledge.
Right.
I didn't know whether that was typical or...
Well, yes, a lawyer can ask permission of the foreman to come in and present a case. And I don't know what the Missouri rules are and how their grand jury process works. Yeah.
But tell us about that situation and what you know about the Ferguson grand jury and the verdict there that has captured so much of our attention.
And I know what everybody else knows, what I've seen in the news and read in the news. That's the extent of my knowledge. I don't have any insider baseball information on it, but I do know from my standpoint as district attorney in Shelby County, our grand jury reviews about 11,000 indictments a year. I have to sign every one of those indictments before they're presented to the grand jury. And so our grand jury works very hard. And again, it's just regular, hard-working citizens who have dedicated their time and energy and said, yes, I will serve in this capacity.
And is this just a random selection, the way petit jury,
exactly,
the pool is selected?
Exactly.
And then are you questioned about, as a potential juror, are you questioned about whatever?
Yes. And you know, with the grand jury, one of the bigger questions is going to be, can you commit this much time to being with us? Our grand jury in Shelby County meets every Tuesday and every Thursday. In the rural jurisdictions, you may have grand jury that meets once every couple of months. It just kind of depends. But with a petit jury, when you're selecting men and women to sit on a jury in a case, yes, we go through the judge asks questions of the panel, the prosecutors ask questions, the defense attorneys ask questions, the jurors are allowed to raise their hand and ask questions of the judge and the prosecutors and the defense attorneys. And so there's a lot of give and take and all we're trying to do is find men and women who can fairly listen to the law and the evidence. And if there's some reason, some experience that they've had in life that keeps them from doing that, then they're not best suited for this case.
I've actually been on 2 juries.
Have you?
Here.
And did you enjoy the process?
I did.
Yes.
I did. But then I was a government teacher, and I really do think people, if called, have a civic obligation to serve. So
I agree, and I think most people, when they get that notice, they try to figure out how to get out of it. And then when they realize they can't, they're glad they went through the process.
Right. Yeah. No, it was, for me, it was fascinating.
Yeah, I bet. I bet you had a lot of questions.
Well, actually, we weren't allowed to ask any questions, but I might have. Another thing that's kind of interesting that's going on is Congressman Steve Cohen's prospective legislative bill. Tell us about what you know about that. That was just in the paper, so I don't know that anybody knows a lot about it. But
Right, and again, my knowledge of that is based upon what I read in the Commercial Appeal, I guess yesterday morning about it. So that's the extent of my knowledge. And I know that the topic, of course, is one that is discussed and has been discussed in many circles lately.
Right.
We in the DA's office have had to, more times than I feel comfortable with, had to indict officers for a variety of criminal offenses. So, but there are also times when officers have had to use deadly force in Shelby County that we've not been able to indict, not been able to bring charges, not because anybody is reluctant to charge law enforcement officers, but because of the law. Everything we do in the DA's office, every decision we make is bound by the laws of the state of Tennessee and the Constitution. And if an officer is defending himself or herself, they have every right under the law to do that.
Have you ever had to bring charges against an officer who's used deadly force?
We have, oh yes, we have, yeah.
Recently?
Trying to think how, I don't know. I know we've had several officers charged recently with a variety, again, unfortunately, of offenses from, bribery and robbery and rape and things like that. There was a vehicular homicide that occurred a couple of years ago from an officer that was driving recklessly while on duty. But yes, our office has charged officers in the past for unjustified use of force. Yeah.
So it's not something that never happens.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah, I mean,
of course not.
What we're hearing now are all these officers who are being excused or not brought to trial or something, but it has happened.
It has happened, and again, I'm not an expert on Missouri law, but in the state of Tennessee, you have a right under the law to defend yourself, and if you feel that your life is in danger, you have a right to protect yourself and defend yourself.
Do you have to kind of prove that was the case, that you were in danger?
Well, it has to be reasonable, yes, and it has to be established from the facts, but it's actually our responsibility as prosecutors to prove that that's not what you were doing. So they're tough cases to make.
Yeah.
From the prosecution side.
Would be.
Yeah.
Do you have any interesting cases coming up right now?
Well, we always have interesting things going on down at 201. It was great to get everybody back to work yesterday after the holiday break and get the courts back. We've got quite a few courts in trial this week on, again, a variety of cases. And so I guess just, look for more of what we do very well, which is handle cases every day and decide which are the worst of the worst and which need to be dealt with accordingly, and which of the offenders can we try to get some help for and stop offending.
Hang on to that thought,
Okay.
because when we come back, I want to talk to you about your goals for the next few years. And we'll be right back with more from DA Weirich on Tennessee Talks. Stay with us.
When we don't talk, when we don't touch, when it doesn't feel like we're even in love, it matters to me. When I don't know what to say, don't know what to do, don't know if it really even matters to you, it matters to me.
Welcome back to Tennessee Talks. We're still here with District Attorney Amy Weirich talking about local issues. And now we want to talk about some of your goals and what you'd like to see. I know reducing gang violence was one, and that's probably ongoing. That's probably not a done deal yet.
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah. But tell us what else you'd like to accomplish. your term is for
8 years.
8 years.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
have 8 years, you have goals, and you have 8 years to get them accomplished.
I do, and I have a long list of things that want to get accomplished, and a lot of those are, boring, dull, in-house matters that we need to take care of. We have an office of 206 employees, so I have to make sure every day that everybody has what they need to do the job that we have to do and are expected to do for the community. Outside of that, gang violence, of course, is an ongoing issue that we deal with. Our multi-agency gang unit was something that I helped create after taking office, and
is that
it's
a new,
working beautifully. Yes.
Is it good? When you say multi-agency, what are the
The U.S.
agencies?
Attorney's Office, our office, the Police Department, the Sheriff's Office, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau, and then other local law enforcement agencies throughout West Tennessee, and all of us working together every day at a separate location, everybody together but a separate location from 201, in the name of eradicating gang activity. And it's that group of officers that has done the heavy lifting on the gang injunctions, and so look for more of that. And we took out the leader of a gang a couple of weeks ago with our U.S. Attorney's Office, handed down a big indictment against a leader of a violent gang. So things like that go a long way in removing violent criminals from the streets and letting the community know that that we're out there working. So continue those efforts. And then domestic violence is a topic that it's hard to get through a day without talking about. We had last year, 2014, our domestic violence prosecution unit inherited 8,200 new cases. That's up from 7,700 from the year before. So it's a good thing, it's a good news, bad news kind of number though, because we know domestic violence impacts many, many, many lives in our community. And when that number goes up, it tells us that more people are reaching out for help to law enforcement.
Okay, not necessarily more incidents.
Hopefully not, but maybe more people reporting and reaching out for help, which is a good thing. Shortly after I took office, we opened the doors on the Family Safety Center, which there are 2 in the state and a couple more being constructed now, and they are one-stop service providers for victims of domestic violence. And so you bring together under one roof the police, the prosecutors, the counselors, the social service agencies to bring criminal and civil and social help to the victims and to the victims' children. Because I know as a career prosecutor that those children that grow up in violence are much more likely to become the next generation of defendants. So anything we can do to stop that rotating door is going to help the community.
You actually have to handle situations after the fact, after the violence has occurred. Is there anything going on to help prevent domestic violence or to prevent young people from joining gangs? I mean, that seems like the ultimate goal is to get ahead of it.
And that the gang prevention was a very important piece to us when we began creating this multi-agency gang unit. Tony Armstrong, Bill Oldham, Ed Stanton, and I have all been in too many situations where a mother comes up to us and says, I got a 9-year-old that's hanging out with the wrong crowd, what do I do? It wasn't good enough for me or for them to say to her, well, if they commit a felony, we've got some great programs for you. We got to do more. And so our multi-agency gang unit officers and staff work very closely with others to prevent that introduction into the gang. They're actually at the schools when the fight might happen to try to diffuse a shooting after a fight or try to diffuse some other problems. So that's a big part of it.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And are there activities, because we've had some incidents where we've had kind of flash gangs with violence. Are there programs to help prevent that kind of, I mean, if young people have interesting places to go or things to do, they're not likely to be in that kind of a situation. Is that just a pipe dream that I have?
And there are many, we're very blessed in this community to have many faith-based organizations and just good, well-intentioned members of the community that open up their doors and have after-school programs for the kids so that they don't have to walk home through dangerous streets and be home alone. They can come here and have a safe place to have a snack and have somebody help them with their homework in Binghamton and the Douglas area and all throughout Riverview. But it's a real challenge, and making people aware of those opportunities is a challenge, and then making the consistency of getting the children to take advantage of those programs and stay engaged. But there's not a week that goes by that somebody within our office isn't getting a call and, you know, stopping by somebody's house late at night and talking with a young man or a young woman who's not seeing things the way they need to see them. Yeah.
Do we have any statistics to track, or any ways to track whether such help is actually helping? If I mean,
I'm sure somebody does. Somebody that keeps up with that information and has the resources to track it. And we started a program before I became DA, when I headed up our gang unit, that was a gang intervention program in the schools. And I know that program has grown and is now in more schools than when we started it in just 2 high schools. And I know that it's changing lives, but it's going to take time, I think, for the community as a whole to see the effects of that.
Right.
But
These things always do take. Yeah.
Right. But if you turn one life around, and we've done that, that's a good thing.
Okay. Any other specific goals? Any other areas you'd like to work with?
Well, I mentioned the domestic violence and the gang unit, and really just have been spending a lot of time and energy reading and talking and discussing on ways that our office can make sure we are smart about how we handle cases. Are we using our resources in the best way to handle the repeat troublemakers as they are? Because it's really a small segment of the population that causes most of the criminal activity.
Trouble, recidivism is
and so if we
problem.
can get a handle on what it is that's driving them to commit crime and maybe fix those issues, then I think that helps the community as a whole.
Yeah, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
We have just zoomed through the show. It always happens that way with you. I want to thank District Attorney Amy Weirich for joining us today, and those of you at home for watching Tennessee Talks. If you want more information about the District Attorney's Office, you can visit their website at www.scdag.com. And if you have any questions about this or any other show on GHS-TV, visit our website at www.ghstv.org. You can also follow the station on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on Tennessee Talks.